Salutations, Seekers! Today's book review is going to be on Stephen Erikson's Gardens of the Moon. This is going to be book 1 of 10 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. This is going to be a high fantasy novel following, for this specific book, the group of soldiers called the Bridge Burners, fresh out of the Siege of Pale and now going on to Dalrhistan, last great free city of the continent of Genebakis, as part of the Genebakis campaign of the Malazan Empire for their conquest. So these bridge burners are a group of sappers, which means that they're the soldiers who deal with breaking down fortifications, structures, buildings, and defenses, and is going to follow their infiltration of the city as a mission to break down the siege and the defenses from the inside. It's going to include betrayal, lies, treachery, romance, passion, character development across multiple lines of characters that are all being followed throughout the book. It's going to include high fantasy aspects of, the gods, magic, fantasy creatures, and all that good stuff. And so, of the things I really enjoyed about the book, first and foremost, it's high-level reading. So you're looking at a broad lexicon required to understand these stories, and I did have to look up a couple dozen words at a time to understand and follow with these books, and I love learning new words, so that was always great for this book. It's going to be akin to Tolkien, Brandon Sanderson, Terry Goodkind, high-density fantasy and fiction novels. The next thing I really appreciated about this is the tying in of a fantasy aspect with real aspect for the content of characters. So you're not just looking at these characters and having them be on the page. She's actually making them real and fleshed out. You're able to see from a first-person perspective what these characters are thinking and feeling, so that it's not beyond your imagination and your reasoning for a character to do what they do for the reasons they do. And on top of that, he then has the interactions parallel beautifully to reality. So what an individual does with an individual with a group with a group with an individual, or even on a global scale, a nation to a nation, and the interactions they have and how they came about is all tied in beautifully. And that's not necessarily to say that the events that are happening with this real politic are based off of real events, but that the events that have happened in reality before. So it is completely believable to have these things occur in the book, and you follow right along with them. They draw you in the story. The next part of the book that I really enjoyed is the melding of its medieval level technology. So you're looking at swords, shields, spears, leatherwork with some ironworking. You're not really having a lot of people running around plate mail, but that level of technology, right? Combined with the fantasy level of technology. So spells, mages, scrolls, potions, that kind of, fun stuff. But the forefront of the Malazan's conquest is brought about not because of the fantasy or even the machines of war, but because of the people, specifically the Malazan Marine, which is a modern concept of a soldier applied to a medieval era. So what this is it is a soldier who is highly trained and highly disciplined, and then that training is repeated from squad to squad to squad to squad, so that it becomes a force, as mentioned throughout the series of the book, a force that has never before seen the like of across all the continents, that it has no peer, no match. And it's really interesting to see how that's applied. To tie into that as well, I greatly appreciate how his concept of warfare is so brutal and real. So when you read a book and they say it's City 1 versus City 2, and we have our army versus their army, and it's 100 soldiers each, that's not an army. In this case, they've got the squad, which is going to be 8 to 12 soldiers, which is a part of a company, which is going to be couple hundred soldiers, which is part of a legion, which is several thousand soldiers, which is part of an army. And it is an actual realistic global scale. For this, it also then adds that level, if you actually stop to think about it, and the fact that these characters that are actually introduced and followed, and you know their names and who they are and everything, maybe not everything about them, but everything involved in the story about them, if they die, it's wrenching your heart out because it's the character that you loved and you followed. But it also is very real in that it mentions the fact that hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers were also dying that you never even heard of. They were just a number in the fact that they had 10,000 soldiers in the 3rd Legion. And it's very real in that sense. It has that very direct personal sense of loss connected to the very indirect sense of loss, and that makes it not just feel like a story, but like life. And then the last thing I'm going to add, and it's something I really liked about the book because I love me some fantasy, weirdness, is on this city that they're doing this infiltration of, the entire time there's a giant floating magical fortress called Moonspawn. It's just a giant magically floating rock. I'm not going to do any spoilers in any of my book reviews, so I won't mention anything about the characters in this, other than the fact that they're very interesting, they're very well done, well written, and the fact that they are tied in so perfectly and beautifully from this beginning book of the series all the way to the last book of the series, and it all comes full circle. He does so well with tying up his loose ends, and he's even done some of the about the author and the acknowledgments and mentioned the fact that he doesn't really believe in cliffhangers, which, as a very impatient individual, I love. I hate cliffhangers. I want to know now, and I want to not sleep for 6 hours because I need to finish the book. So I will do the next book review tomorrow, and hope you guys have a great day. Salutations.